Hank Paulson is our Treasury Secretary now, but he was in charge of Goldman Sachs at the time that the leverage was granted. In fact, Mr. Paulson testified before the SEC February 29, 2000, in fact, asking for the leverage requirements to be lifted in effect, or expanded, excuse me. He says, we and other global firms have for many years urged the SEC to reform its net capital rule. That is what leverage is referred to as in this testimony, to allow for more efficient use of capital, was the way they phrased it. More efficient use of capital. This is the single most important factor, Paulson goes on to say, in driving significant parts of our business offshore. In other words, he's in effect saying because leverage is available offshore, we're losing business. So that our firms can remain competitive with our foreign competitors, risk-based capital standards must become the norm. You have to wonder how Hank Paulson, who has done an admirable job, a sensational job really, in dealing with the crisis, you have to wonder how he feels about that testimony at this point. Here's my only response to your argument that, well, Paulson now answers to a different master. Let me make my point. If you are responsible for promoting and advocating a legislative change in America that allows tremendous risk-taking to be assumed on a level that it had not been taken before, and you are then able to compensate yourself and those around you to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of that leverage, only to see the consequences of those actions brought home to bear on the totality of the American taxpayer, the totality of the American retirement accounts, the totality of the American populace, with the exception of a very small number of people, you do have to wonder, John Najarian, what goes through your head. In other words, it goes to the Warren Buffett point, Karen, which is if you're selling insurance on something, I'm not saying, I don't know whether Hank Paulson, I'm not indicting him individually other than the fact that he was among a group of people. He was not the only one that did this either, and he happens to be the Treasury Secretary now. But when are we going to get to a point where we're actually going to have a real conversation about the fact that the people that are dealing with this crisis were, at least in part, the people that contributed to its construction?
I'm wondering if that's part of the reason some of their actions haven't been as effective as they hoped, because there is potentially a credibility problem. You wonder about the interrelated effects of Goldman with... It's hard not to...
How can you not wonder that, Peter?
With AIG being so intertwined with Goldman, would they let AIG fail? No, they couldn't because of the Goldman interaction. It's, you know...
And at what point do we start to get actual transparency on the way out? We still don't even know the minutes of what happened in the meeting with the banking CEOs earlier this week.
And that's why I think a lot of folks are looking forward to a new administration, a new November, to start seeing when things will start changing actually in January. But a lot of folks are calling for it to start changing even before that.
Go ahead.
You know, but at the end of the day, Dylan, do you really think the policymakers in Washington fully understood, whether it be now or back in 2000, what it is Wall Street does?
Clearly they did not.
Clearly they did not. And at a certain point, you wonder if they will ever acquire the necessary knowledge to understand the Wall Street business model and how exactly it is.
But does it take a Wharton MBA to know that giving somebody $40 for every dollar that they have
Absolutely
is a risky decision?
But it takes someone that actually is focused and concerned about that problem. They clearly were not.
Well, you know, to his defense, and I'm not trying to defend him now, I mean, my kids come to me, I want candy, I want to stay out till midnight. Yeah. You don't have to let them. I mean, these guys had a vote on this thing going through.
Oh, our politicians failed. So they're the number one party here,
absolutely,
without question, are the politicians who allowed for the credit default swap market to be opaque. The list of political failures here is too long for this TV show.
Agreed. And not understanding is not an excuse.
No contest. And not understanding clearly is not an excuse.
And if you don't understand it, it's going to happen again.
Let's understand it, hey? We're going to take